All right, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be a great episode. We're going to get right into it. No long intros. We get right into the conversation this time. I'm here with Shea Dawson. What's going on, Shea?
Hey, how you doing? What's up?
Hey, honor to have you here. I recently connected with Shea. This has been a connection that's long overdue. I hosted a panel Shea was on. This had to be almost a year and a half ago at this point. But hey, but we finally made it work, finally made the connection happen. Wanted to have Shea on, not only to tell her story, but to talk about some of the dope things she's up to. So before we get into it, if you don't know Shea, she's a former two-sport athlete at Robert Morris University, basketball and volleyball, correct?
Yes, correct.
Man, I don't know how you do it. Two sports. I'm like, man, we're going to talk about that in a second. But on top of that, Shea is also the host of the Tipping the Scales podcast. Make sure you go check that out on all platforms. We'll talk about where you can find it at the end, or you can just go check the show notes right now and pause the episode and go look it up. Also, Shea is the Senior Director of Athlete Relations at Overtime.
Overtime.
I know people in high places. You know what I'm saying? So
Thank you, Taj.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. Let's dive right in because, as you know, the Thrive After Sports podcast is really a platform to showcase athletes like yourself, former athletes who are doing great things and who have really carved out a lane for themselves after their playing careers, hence the name Thrive After Sports. So let's just start with this. I mean, Robert Morris University, I don't know how people do two sports in college. And I say that because you're getting a scholarship for one. Maybe this is just my mindset. I'm like, I don't know if I got the time to do two unless you're giving me some extra money. But what was that like being a two-sport athlete?
Well, first, kudos to you for doing this type of show. Thrive After Sports, something that everyone needs to focus on if, they're in the athlete advocacy space. And love your platform, love what you're doing. And thank you for sharing it with me. But two-sport athlete, well, one, I played volleyball my 5th year, so I'm not superhuman. I played I went to junior college, so I played basketball there 2 years, and then I had 5 to finish. Everyone knows you get 5 to finish. So in my first 2 years, I played basketball, and then in my 5th year, there was no way I could do school without sports. So I knew my other sport and my other love that I was pretty good at volleyball. So I went to the volleyball coach, and I was like, look, I am a volleyball player, even though basketball is my scholarship. Love to, try out, show you my skills. End up making the team, and my basketball my school's already getting paid for through basketball. So it was a no-brainer for the coach to have an extra body in practice, to play in some games. I didn't play a ton. I was one of the shortest people on the team. But most Black athletes are middle blockers when they go. So, there's not a lot of middle blockers. So I got to play a lot behind some really talented girls. And it was great for the camaraderie and, just to meet more people on campus that were not specifically like me, grew up like me. So it was really good for me in a social aspect. I loved it.
That's awesome. So you got to finish up the 5th year playing volleyball. Which one do you like more? Or which one was your first love, I should say, basketball or volleyball?
So basketball was my first love, but I liked volleyball more because volleyball was more my personality, meaning like, in volleyball, when a play happens and it doesn't go in your favor, you still celebrate, like in a way where you're like, all right, everybody, let's go, let's gather it, like, let's focus, let's do this, And basketball is more of like, damn, what you doing? Like, what I mean? So I think my personality thrived more in volleyball, but basketball was what I grew up on. And, in the Black community, it's what saves you. So that's why I have a love for it. I still work in basketball. And I think human connection just makes more sense in basketball than it does volleyball. Volleyball has a short lifespan. Basketball is almost like a forever thing. So
okay,
that's how
I feel you on that.
Describe it. Yeah.
And speaking of the lifespan of basketball, when you were going into college or maybe even towards the tail end, what were you thinking in terms of like, were you aspiring to go to the WNBA, play overseas ball? What were you looking at as far as a professional career?
So if I'm being honest, my heart never wanted to go to the WNBA, but my basketball playing persona that I was projecting to the world wanted to go to the WNBA, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
But I knew in my heart that I didn't work hard enough to make it to the WNBA. So therefore, I was realistic with myself when I turned 22 and it was time to graduate. And I was like, girl, it's going to be too hard. Like, you can't just turn it on. You have to put a body of work together. And I was a really good basketball player. I was a two guard. I was a shooting guard. I shot really well from the field. I was a 3-point specialist. And I thought I could have played longer, but I knew that women didn't make a lot of money overseas. So I wasn't even going to try and put myself in that position, in that predicament, just to fit the narrative. Like I said, the persona, the athlete basketball player persona. So I tried to find some internships, and I ended up finding an internship with 5-Star Basketball that basically was run out of Robert Morris University. And 5-Star Basketball showed me how men's basketball works. And because I started in the mailroom technically, which is like at registration, the registration table, when parents come, athletes come, that's how you start to meet everybody in the space. And once I decided that this is something I'm going to do, I became like a basketball camp guru, like literally what I do today, just at like the highest level, if that makes sense. So I got to see how you start from a 6th grader to what you do in 7th grade, what you're supposed to do in 8th grade. Now 9th grade, it starts to ratchet up. 10th grade, you start to know where you're at are you on draft boards? Are you on the scale? 11th grade is like solidifying your spot. And then 12th grade is like getting ready for the pros. So I started to learn how it all worked. And I also had a brother who was coming up in the game. So when I was a senior, and my brother was, I was a senior in college, my brother was becoming on his senior year of high school. So I knew I needed to figure out the pathway to help him navigate that, because my mom was single mom. She didn't have a guy in the house to kind of help figure that out. So I was that person, and make sure that I was at every camp and tournament and talk to all the scouts. And yeah, so I basically was able to help my brother get to the league by understanding how everything worked.
Wow, that's dope. Look at you helping your brother get where he wants to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm wearing my brother right now, Malcolm Thomas, San Diego State.
Let's go. Shout out. I was going to ask you where he's at now. That's dope.
He's in Turkey, playing in Turkey. He's doing his thing. So I'm happy for him.
What a cool story. See, you just full of surprises. I was excited to do this interview, but now to find out you helped your brother, make it to college and, play professionally. That's so cool. Yeah. I love that.
And I want to go back. That's why I do what I do. So he taught me the game.
That's awesome. What a cool way to get your experience by helping your brother do something like that. That's powerful right there. I love to see it.
Thank you. That's dope.
Yeah, I want to go back to for a second for something you shared about I appreciate your transparency just about you personally not wanting to play at the next level. Because I feel like I'd always tell people flat out, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough to play in the NFL. So I didn't even go to any camps or try to make a team or get a trainer. It's just it's a wrap. And I had fallen out of love with the game. And the reason I say I appreciate your transparency is because sometimes you talk to some people and be like, man, I could have made it to the league, but the coach was tripping. Sometimes, sometimes that is the case, but most of the time it's just either you didn't really want to put in the work, or you just weren't good enough, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to be realistic. So thank you for being honest and real. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And you're right. Sometimes it is the coach, but usually that's a behavioral thing. That's not your skill, because skills, no matter if your behavior, if you're really, really that good, they'll take you anyway. So, but sometimes it's hard to be realistic with yourself when you've been doing something a really long time. But like I said, I had to be super honest with myself to not chase a dream that I didn't really want, only because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. I thought that's what everybody wanted me to do, because that was the natural progression of questions oh, what are you going to do now? Oh yeah, I'm trying out for some teams, you know what I'm saying? I'm about to do WNBA, when I know I'd be lying. So it's I'm not about to do that. I'm not about to cap. What I'm about to do is I'm about to get a job, and I'm about to find my way. And I started that at 22, and I'm glad I did, because all of those connections that I started when I was 22 have helped me today. So if I didn't put in, and usually it takes 10 years to actually see the benefits of your job or your discipline. And yeah, so everything that I have now is I did that 15, 14 years ago. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm leaning on all those people that I met when I was a 22-year-old, and just stay consistent and solid. And I'm always able to call on them. And so that's the progression of an athlete after sports, is all the people that you meet along the way, you stay in touch with them, you stay thorough, and they'll reach back. You know what I mean? They'll help you out when you need them.
Mm-hmm. Bar. Hey, Shea is on here preaching, y'all. I should have told you guys to get the notepad ready before we really dive in. Let's go. This is gonna be. I knew this is gonna be you're gonna drop a bunch of gems on here. So let's take it back to the internship for a second. And forgive me if you already shared this. Maybe I missed it, but you said that the internship was at Robert Morris, which obviously is convenient. But just because it's there doesn't mean that it was guaranteed for you to get it. So can you talk about how you put yourself in position to actually land that internship?
Yeah, well, one part of it is luck, and timing, because they were looking for new assistants. And I emailed them and I called them. So I was definitely persistent in my efforts to get that internship. But I also went to Robert Morris. They were looking for new people. So it was the timing. It was the universe. It was the timing. And I think it was God's plan for me to do it. Like, I think that a lot of that had to do with it. I didn't have the skill set at the time, but I did have the determination. And I did describe that in my email to the owner. It was that my brother plays basketball. I play basketball, Robert Morris. I'm going to help you with anything that you need. I'm willing to work for free. I think that was obviously something that they were excited about. And I did work for free that first year. And yeah, I'm here. I'm on campus. You don't have to pay me that much. Like, I already have an apartment here. Like, I know the grounds. Like, I just described how I could add value to 5-star. And I think I gave them no opportunity to say no. And I think because I had already thought through room and board, I had already told them that I'd work for free. I'd already told them that I'm willing to do whatever. And come to find out, when I did work the camp, I knew they needed a lot. So that's why they said yes.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And then I started to build the blueprint from taking everything, all the information from the inside, and started to realize, wow, so many people don't know what goes on. It's like they perceive this camp to be this huge mega camp for elite athletes, which it is, but they don't know we're still just figuring it out. And I found that same thing to be true about the NBA. It's like, you think everyone's like this amazing executive and they know so much and they're the gurus, when really they just have great people that work around them and they collaborate with each other. So there's not really that many experts in the world when it comes to certain things. A lot of people are just either good collaborators, good communicators, good leaders, and they allow other people to help them with a vision. And so once I started to realize that, then I knew I had something. So I was like, okay, great. I'll just keep building my network and keep building my tribe and put good people around me and dream big, and let's do it. And that's how it all works. So yeah. Robert Morris, 5-star basketball, they taught me the game. That's all I say. Like, I always so happy that I started from the very beginning.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanna take a moment to go forward and then go back, because your career trajectory. I was even earlier, it was either earlier this morning or last night at some point. It's all a blur. But I went back over your LinkedIn knowing that we have this interview today, and I was like, man, she talk about a resume. So I want to but I want to talk about each one of those stops. But before we do that, because I think it's important to look at where you're at now. Like I said, you're the head of athlete relations at Overtime. Two-part question. For those who are not familiar with Overtime, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, but can you just describe what Overtime is, and then also your role as head of athlete relations?
Yes. So basically, Overtime is a type of company that if you know, you know. So if you don't know about Overtime, then you probably ain't Overtime. But Overtime is essentially a content company that does live events. We're very, very, very specified in how we produce short form content, which is on social media, and long form content. We have literally the best shooter, producer, editors, and we hire that way. We hire all of those skill sets in one person to go and either shoot with an athlete like a Mikey Williams. Right now we have a show coming out with Jada Williams, who's #1 in her class, who goes to La Jolla Country Day out of San Diego, but she's from Kansas City. We literally send a shooter, producer, editor with one of those talented athletes and get to know them and meet them and shoot them at their home and at their workouts and all that. And then we have an inside team, and we have amazing technology that helps us create long form content, but that we can also break down and kind of help build a persona of what this athlete is and who they're about on social media, and it's a Gen Z focused company that all the Gen Z athletes use their phone to consume content, whether that's on social. And social and content are two different things. Social is just your social media accounts, IG, TikTok, and your content is YouTube, your long form, almost like a show. We have episodic content, so like 8 to 10 episodes to tell that athlete's story. But usually kids are looking at them because they want to be them. They're looking up to them. And then when we have our live events, we're just like an environment that fills people up we, lean into the community. We find, just random people who do amazing things, or random kids to do amazing things, and build a story around them. We make that story viable. We make it viral. Like, we care about that. And so a lot of people are like, well, how can you have a league if no one knows what the athlete is? It's like, because we have the ability to make that athlete well known and seen by the way we cover the content and by the way we tell that story. So it's really about storytelling, and we know our audience. We have the data to prove it. So we just do a really good job of diving into youth sports and making it the thing. And that's why we're different, because we don't try to be like the NBA. We don't try to be like anyone else. We literally try to be what our audience tells us to be. That's why it's if you know type of situation. So
right.
It's a content media company with a sports lens, basically. But we're the next. We want to be the next sports legacy company for the next generation.
Awesome. And it's crazy because Overtime hasn't been around for that. How old is the company?
4.5 years, going on 5.
Oh, okay.
Not 5. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why I thought
in
it was
2019. So I started when it was like 2 years old. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I'm going
okay,
on 3 years
why.
now.
Nice. That's awesome. And then, so your role as head of athlete relations, like, what is that all about? With everything you just outlined, what do you do specifically?
Okay, so I basically created my role when I was at the Sixers. I was working for the Sixers in player development, and it was great. And this is off-court player development. So some people think it's on-court, but it's off-court. So basically handling all the day-to-day with the athletes, from everything from their DMV license to their easy pass to game days, their family, hosting their families in town, coming to getting their tickets, their agents, just interacting, anything that had to do with like the flow of the athlete. And I realized that we were not specifically helping them learn the business. They were just listening to us, listening to me, and not asking a lot of questions, not understanding the ecosystem that they were involved in. And as a Black woman who is raising a Black man in Malcolm and my little brother Mikey, I was like, I don't want that for them. I want them to come to me and talk to me about the VP of player development, or the VP of player personnel, and say, oh yeah, I sat down with the GM today and we talked about my contract and how they see me. Like, I wanted them to be able to talk like that, but I knew that I didn't get that time with them. That wasn't my role, so I couldn't do that there. So I knew the only way I would be respected in the space is if I went outside. So I left the Sixers to do that at Overtime, because they were already working with young athletes. Like I said, and my godbrother Mikey, he was an athlete at the first event that the Overtime had, which is called the Takeover. And the Takeover is essentially a huge warehouse. They brought all the best athletes, boys and girls, and treated the exact same. I mean, they got the amazing uniforms as the girls and the boys. Some of the activities that they did were really cool. And I was like, oh, they really thought about this. Like, they did not slack on the girls. Like, they literally treated them like superstars as well. So I took that into account, and I said, I haven't seen a company do that at the scale. And then Mikey loved it. He breathed Overtime. He was like telling me about all the content. Like, I watch Overtime Larry, and they do like these like challenges, and they're going to come to my house and do like the lie detector test. And it was just like all these cool things that I thought were so fun, that I thought the NBA doesn't allow sometimes, is to have fun, because everything is so business oriented. So I was like, yes, I want to live in a place where kids are telling me what to do. I want to have that kind of job. And so I'm like, I'm going to take what I know from the NBA. I'm going to take all that, and I'm going to take it to Overtime, and I'm going to teach all the athletes about what I know. And I'm going to pour in all that pro knowledge into them. Hence why I call myself a pro path educator, because starting from 5-star all the way to the NBA, and now at Overtime, we started our new league called OTE. I can now bring all of that institutional knowledge back and pour it in, and help create strong, educated, curious, critical thinking Black men, and or just athletes in general. And to me, that excites me, and that is something that I'm living for. I can't wait to see this, new class, and 5 classes from now, and they're coming into the NBA all pro ready, and they're like, thank you OTE for bringing athletes that know what's up. So that's like my dream.
That's good. Yeah, we definitely want to talk about OTE. We have to get to that in a second. But before we get to OTE, so one of the things, I mean, you just said a lot, but one of the things that I appreciated the most about what you shared is how you created a role. I don't want that to go over anybody's head.
Yeah.
Like, And we live in a day and age where you can literally, within reason, if you are accumulating skills, you can take those skills and look for opportunities to create roles somewhere else, like Shea just told you she did. So don't let that go over your head. A lot of people who tune into this show, these are, parents of athletes, coaches of athletes, or even athletes themselves who are in college or about to graduate or even coming out of their pro career. So can you just take us like, I want to dive deeper into what you said about creating the role. So what did that look like? Like when you recognized it, obviously you saw your brother was talking about overtime. Like, what did you do next? Who did you reach out to? You don't have to drop names, but like, what was your process to creating the role and then starting the role?
Yeah, so basically my process was, I definitely got to a place where I was ready to leave, but I didn't know what my next step was. I was unhappy with how I was being managed, and the experiences that I was being limited to. Like, I just thought I proved myself, for 2 years, and I thought in the third year it would be different. But because they went through a reorganization, Brian Colangelo had resigned, and I thought maybe I'd get more responsibility, but in reality, I got things taken away from me. One, because you had to make room for new people to come in and for them to be able to, if you come into the NBA, you come in kind of with a seniority if you've done something at a higher level that maybe someone like myself, a manager, hadn't done. But I felt that I knew a lot about the guys. I knew a lot of the athletes that were coming in. In Philly, we had tons of athletes coming in and out all the time. Like we were the process, right? So we were trying to figure out who was our core guys. And we had a lot of guys come through there. And I knew a lot of them, guys that came in for free agency workouts, guys that, got traded there, or guys that came on a 10-day contract or had call-ups. So I'm like, if I know all these athletes and I know the agents coming in, why am I being pushed to the side? So I realized my worth because of that. So basically I had to realize my worth first. And I knew my worth was what it was because the people gave me the power. The athletes gave me the power. They always said, I want Shea to handle this. I want Shea to do this. They came to me when they had issues. They weren't going to anyone else who had higher titles than me. They were coming to me, sitting their butts on my desk. Jimmy Butler sat his butt on my desk and basically in front of everybody and was just talking to me about the things that he felt. And I thought, that's powerful. And I said, that's my value, is that these athletes really know that I care about them. And so that was my leverage point right there, right? So I knew I had the support of the athletes to make a move, but I also knew, like, okay, if I'm gonna leave, what am I gonna do? Because I was unhappy, and I had got to that point where I was tired of being unhappy coming into work every single day, even if it was the NBA. I'm like, I don't care. I do not want to be in a toxic environment. I do not want to be in an unhappy environment. I do not get along with some of the people that are managing me, and they don't get along with each other. So I'm not about to be a pawn in the game. I'm losing valuable time here. Again, my intention is to help young athletes, young Black men, to do what they need to do. And that's come in, make a name for themselves, play as much as possible, meet as many people as possible, and really use this as a way to showcase who they are. So later on, after sports, they can come back and say, wow, like, I really liked him when he was here. And I would say a perfect example of that was Elton Brand. Elton Brand was an athlete in a jersey when I got to Philly, and he became the GM when I was there. So for me to see that full circle moment, I said, oh shit, like, yes, that is my intention. So, excuse me for cussing. Sorry.
Oh, you good?
So that was an epiphany I had. And so, okay. So that was an epiphany that I had. And so I was like, all right, cool. So basically what I did was I made decks. So the universe was talking to me. This is how it happened. So Monty Williams was the coach at the time. And he, when I tell you, is an amazing soul. I was just like literally absorbing him from afar. Everything he did was like, it had a philosophy, it had a purpose, it had a reason. And so I would talk to him a lot and I would observe him a lot. He would either read or he'd give players like excerpts of books. He would photocopy it and staple it together and give it to guys, and they'd be reading it when they were walking or reading it at breakfast. And that's the kind of person, that's kind of impact I wanted to have. So he got the job in Phoenix and I was trying to go with him, but I didn't know how to tell him that because I didn't know if that was like against the rules. I was just like afraid. I didn't know what to do. So I was trying to drop little signs to him that I wanted to go with him. But he ended up giving me a book that was really good. Was really good. It really helped me. So I was like, he does value me. He doesn't know what he's doing either, because I also helped onboard him. So I knew that he was figuring his stuff out too. So I don't know if he knew how to like just bring somebody with him. So I was like, okay, but I made a deck that I was going to send to him, but the universe kept preventing me from sending it to him for some reason. Like I'd reach out, we would talk, and then something would happen where we wouldn't continue our conversation. So, but I had that on ice. So it was a deck basically describing Shea. and it was titled The Shea Dawson Experience X, so like, times Phoenix Suns or whatever. I don't remember the title. But and it was it was like an 18-page deck that described how I added value to an organization. And I was going to send that to him if I got the opportunity. Never got the opportunity. Also, a lot of my friends were going to the Clippers. I knew a lot of people on the Clippers team, Paul George, Tyronn Lue, like all of them. And Todd Wright also became, I don't know his official title, but he basically was the strength and conditioning coach and an assistant coach on the Sixers. He was an advocate of mine, and I talked to him all the time. So I thought maybe I could pitch him that idea as well. So I made a deck for the Clippers. So I had a deck for the Suns, a deck for the Clippers, and then overtime. I was like, oh shit. I remember overtime was like such an amazing experience. I could see myself working at that company. So I went on their website. I saw that they had an athlete relations job, but the scope of work was like, how is this going to help you? So I basically took that, reorganized it to my skill set, and made a deck with that explanation. Also the Shea Dawson experience, but kind of more tailored to their business and what they were doing, and kind of how I saw how I interacted with them, and then how I saw them growing. Like, you need more athletes to continue to do these overtime takeovers. I'm going to help you get those athletes by the Shea Dawson experience. So I made that deck, and the universe said, somehow it didn't allow me to send those two decks from the Suns and the Clippers, but I did get in touch with someone from overtime. And so when I reached out and sent my resume, they called me right away and was like, hey, we'd love to talk. And so when they invited me to New York to talk, I brought that deck and I presented that deck, and they were like, yes, we need that. We want that. And so I was able to leverage all of that. I had a job, so I was able to leverage my job with the Sixers, and I also had an interview with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I got to leverage that as well. And I basically chose the road less traveled by because of my little brother and because of how he was informing me about the future. And I felt like the NBA was a dinosaur and how they were approaching just interactions with athletes. So I chose my little brother. I chose overtime. I chose Mikey. I chose to, and another goal and intention of mine is to always infiltrate a system that I know that my brothers are going to interact with, and extract that information and help guide them. And that's what I did. So I was like, I'm going to go to overtime. He's going to work with overtime. So I'm going to know all the things about overtime, so I can help his brand grow. I can help, him make decisions about, content that we're going to be shooting or shows that we're going to be making. And yeah, so that's kind of how I made the decision. And it aligned. Again, a lot of it was timing, a lot of it was luck, and a lot of it was me being brave enough to choose myself and to set myself up where I had a number of things in alignment that I could choose from. So that's kind of how I did it.
Wow, Shay. No, that makes perfect sense. That was such a dope story. Thank you for going into detail about that. I love, I mean, where do I even begin with that? I don't want to be hogging the mic. I want to make sure I let you share some more, but I do want to say, I love how you bet on yourself, and how some people would say, a lot of people would get discouraged. Well, first of all, let's start with this. A lot of people wouldn't even put together an 18-page deck to begin with, to bet on themselves and throw their hat in the ring. And then when it didn't work out for you to go to Phoenix, for you to do it again with the Clippers, a lot of people would have given up at that point and be like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to just stay where I'm at. And then for you to identify another opportunity and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. Like, I have this saying, and this is regardless of, people's religious beliefs. I always say God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. God or the universe, takes notes. The universe takes notes. God takes notes. So it's watching. He's seeing what you're doing. And regardless, that effort is not wasted, even if it doesn't pan out. It's still chipping away in another area you may not have seen yet. And that's a true testament to your story. So, wow.
Thank you. I always say that as well. And you have to meet the energy or God, whatever you choose to believe in. I believe in God. You have to meet him halfway. And you have to add value. You have to already be doing that work in order for the door to open. You can't expect someone to open it for you without doing the work. So that's why I did the deck. That's why I did all the work, so the person can say yes or no. That's all. Every time you go to a door, the answer for that person should only be set to say yes or no. I already did all the groundwork for you. I already told you what I'm going to bring to the table. I already spelled out the scope of work. All you need to say is if this is a value to you or not. And that's what I knew.
Man, that's dope. Man, we're going to church. We're going to church today. You only know we were going to church on the podcast.
And I will add that I was tired of being a victim. Like, I was walking around the Sixers. So like, I was getting resentful. I was getting things taken away from me. And I was like, why do I feel like this? Like, I don't want, and when people would ask me, how are you doing today, Shea? I'd be like, oh, it could be better. You know, just like that Debbie Downer, like, just like that. I was basically sucking the energy out of people just by like, because I did feel that way, but I'm like, I got to do something to change it. So I was tired of being a victim. So I said, I got to stop this victimhood. I got to stop this victimhood. Like this, I got to decide, am I going to stay here or am I going to go? Because I got a lot to give to the world, and to stay here and allow people to manage me the way they were managing me because they didn't understand me, or they say, oh, you have this magic, or we don't know how to quantify what you do because you do so many things. Like, okay, well, I'm not trying to hear all that. I'm going to go a place where somebody can let me do me, which is the Shea Dawson experience, which means the best possible human experience one can provide person to person. I'm going to give that to somebody, and somebody's going to utilize that and help grow their company. And over time said yes to me. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. It's like, I had to stop being a victim. Like, I'm not a victim. Yeah, they're treating me like shit, but okay, well, it's up to me to decide if I'm going to stay and allow that, or I'm going to make a new path for myself. Like, yeah.
You know, Shay, you brought up such a good point. I wasn't even planning on talking to you about this, but since you brought it up, I think what you just shared is so important for many reasons, because I think, especially today, a lot of people are buying into victim culture. It's like, it's cool to be a victim nowadays. And I think that's a dangerous philosophy where if that continues and people start leaning into, oh, I can get praise and get awarded and people will feel sympathy and show me love for being a victim, that's great.
Yeah.
You're going to get that temporary attention, but it doesn't get you anywhere. And so for you to say that you didn't allow yourself to be a victim, I think that's so important. Maybe I just want to ask you this, because I think you might have a lot to share on this. For anybody listening right now who may be teetering that line of, falling into victimhood, what do you want to say to that person who maybe needs to snap out of the victimhood mentality and put themselves in a better position?
And thank you for asking me that, because I've done a lot of work in this area. So it's about the deep work. Every single human being needs to do deep work. That it means traumas aren't your fault, and things that happen to you that are unfortunate and disappointing, they're not your fault, but it is your job to heal from it, and you have to seek that healing out. So for me, that's reading books. I read this book called The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how to take those steps in order to deal with traumas that you've experienced before. I read a book called Atomic Habits, right, on how to incrementally make habits like your system, the system that you operate in. So I did all of the things that I needed to in terms of reading text and then asking people for feedback. How am I received? How do you see me? What are the areas that are my brand? What are the things that people say about me that I can kind of critique and critically like break down, like be honest? And I did that all while I was a victim. I did go through this victim mentality. Like I said, like I was in this victimhood space, but I had to get out of it. And I was tired of sucking the energy from people, because that's not me. I'm a person that tries to fill people up, but I only can fill people up if I'm giving. And I was not allowed to give. They basically, they stripped me of the opportunity to give, right? I couldn't give people tickets anymore. I couldn't give people access behind the building anymore. Experiences that changed people's lives because of the people they met, at the Sixers game. Like all that they just needed was that opportunity, that connection. And I was no longer able to do that. So that's why I got frustrated. That's why I was in this blaming mode of like, it's their fault. And I was like, no. I woke up and I was like, no. So I started to read things. I started to journal. I started to talk to people. I started to share the things I was going through in a way that was more of like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? So I started to talk to people. I started to talk to God. I started to the universe, whatever you say. And that really helped me to kind of get a hold of who I was in the workplace. I knew who I was out of the workplace, but I didn't know who I was in a work environment. So I needed to understand who I was in that environment. And I think doing the deep work, always preparing my mind for disappointment. Okay, I want this to happen, but I know that this is a possibility. So if this is a possibility, what am I going to do? So I started to prepare myself. What am I going to do when they say no? What am I going to do when they disrespect me in front of athletes or in front of other people? What am I going to do? And I started to work on that. And even this year, that stuff happened to me too. But I had already done the deep work. So again, my atomic habits, my process, my systems kicked in, and I already knew exactly what to do. And I ended up coming out on top. And instead of going back into victimhood. So I had to practice. I had to train myself. I had to constantly say, what if? Not, oh, I want this job so bad. I want this job so bad. No, I was like, if I don't get this job, And some people say, don't put that energy out there. But if you don't put that energy out there, which happens a lot with athletes, they're like, oh, I don't have no plan B. It's only plan A. Well, businesses have contingency plans all the time. Why can't we have our own contingency plans? So I started contingency planning my life. And ever since then, like things have been really good. And that's how I got out of victimhood. And that's why I won't ever go back. Because now I plan for the worst, instead of hoping for the best, even though I do hope for the best, but I know what to do when things don't go right. When I don't get jobs, when I don't get opportunities, when I don't get shout outs, when I don't get the credit, I know what I'm going to do. And I'm probably going to shine even more because I'm going to focus on things that you're not in control of. And you're not even going to understand how I even got this elevation over here. Cause you're gonna be like, wait, I took that away from you. Like, I thought you were going to be, nah, like I got other things that I do. Like, I'm actually a well-versed human being. Like, I don't have all my eggs in one basket. Like, I'm actually doing other things. And so learning how to pivot too, deep work and learning how to pivot and training yourself, but reading a lot, even if that's going into Google and say, I didn't get the opportunity I wanted and somebody disrespected me. Like even going in Google and typing that, things are going to come up and you start to read. And then you can, what happens is you start to connect all of the dots because it's almost like being ghosted or it's almost like being left hanging. That's why you don't know what to do. That's why you spiral into all these emotions and these feelings because your brain doesn't have anything to connect to. But if you start to read about the things that other people are going through, just like you'll be able to literally say, oh, okay, I remember that one CEO said this and they ended up creating this amazing company because they didn't get that opportunity, right? And it's like, you don't get the things that you want, you get the things that you negotiate, but you also don't get the things that you want sometimes because you deserve more or you deserve better. And that's not where you're supposed to be. So you got to start to realize like a rejection is a protection. It's not because you're not good enough, but that's just not where God wants you to go. That's not where the universe wants you to go. You want that. You got to stop making your own plans. You got to be ready for everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. Hey, thank you for sharing, your journey of how you were able to rise above victimhood. You said that's how I came out of my victimhood and I'm not going back. I
ain't going back. But I will cry because I'm sensitive. I will get upset. I will tell my fiance, who always got my back, and he, telling me, "Girl, you need to be doing this." But I will feel those type of human emotions. But it's what I do. Like I know how to get it out, and I know how to move on instead of let it shape my actions or my next steps or my process. Like, nah, people are going to be people. People are going to disappoint you. But what are you going to do when they do disappoint you? You cannot control what other people do. You can only control what you do. So focus on other things. That's not for you right now. And it'll come back. And, that always feels good when it does.
That's right. Bars.
Bars.
I needed some sound effects and stuff. We need some air horns right now. I need to get some air horns in here. But I want to go back to something else you said, because while you were talking about how you came out of victimhood, you also mentioned like you started asking people around you, like, what is my brand? Like, how do I show up in the world? And I think I want to use that as an example right now, really to ask you a question, like for those athletes who are in transition. That actually reminded me of something. You might appreciate this. Just real quick side note. When you talked about, what is your brand? I have this thing I do with former athletes that I'm working with where I call it 3x3. And it's you ask the three people closest to you 3 questions. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And how do you envision me making a contribution in this world? And that third question is really the most powerful. The first 2 give you good insight, but the third question about contribution is it really ties into what you said about what is your brand. And you can use that to kind of be like, okay, this is how people see me, but how do I see myself and who do I want to be in this world? So I'm laying all that out just to really ask you, for those athletes listening right now who are transitioning out of their sport, or maybe they've been out a few years, maybe they're working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, no disrespect to Enterprise, but you know what I'm talking about. What advice can you give to those people? Yep. What advice do you give to those people who are trying to figure out the next steps and figure out who they are outside of the jersey?
Well, hopefully they've done the work to build their tribe from the university that they've come from, right? So that's really, so if you're not in school yet, or you're in high school or whatever, but like you need to build your tribe while you're in school, while you're an active uniform or you're an active player. They need to know and vouch who you are. So you need to be able to have people from your university that you can lean on and that you can reach back and maybe ask those questions. Like I said, how do they see you? Or if there's any opportunities, please let me know. I am interested in X. I'm interested in these areas or whatever. But if you didn't do that groundwork and you are working at a job that you didn't see yourself as, let's say you thought you were going to become a pro athlete at a certain level, and that did not happen. What you have to do now is rely on your network in terms of, let's say, well, most of the athletes that do not go pro, they thought they were on the cusp, right? So you do have a brand in terms of who you were. So like if you went to Syracuse, people in Syracuse know who you are. So somebody there is going to be able to vouch for you, wants you to be a part of what they're doing because they followed you for so long. They know who you are. They know what kind of athlete you were. Or let's say if I was in Robert Morris, I knew I didn't want to stay in Pittsburgh. But if I was to stay in Pittsburgh, I knew there was a lot of Pittsburgh alum at a lot of companies. Carnegie Mellon, Pitt, like I was at a lot, Duquesne, I was at a lot of these universities where I had met people and there were jobs on the table. There were jobs in the industry, in basketball, but also just in corporate. So I could have done that, but sometimes you have to take those jobs to kind of figure out what you don't want to do. So if you're trying to, let's say, break into the sports world, you have to start your own services. You have to speak from the lens of who you are, which is an athlete, right? If you're a point guard, if you're a shooting guard, whatever you learn from those skills, you have to rely on that and you have to translate that into now either what is that, your own training? Are you making content? Are you doing a podcast? You literally have to carve out your own niche and you have to find out which medium you're going to do that. Is that writing? Is that audio? Is that content? And that's talking in today's world, right? Like when I was an athlete, content and podcast and all that, it was not a thing. Like that's why I went into the camp space. That was how I carved out my little niche. It was like, I'm gonna be a camp guru. So I'm gonna do 5-star, I'm gonna do top 100 camp, I'm gonna do Adidas Nations, I'm gonna do Pangos, I'm gonna go to NBA Summer League. Everything, all of those had the same blueprint, and I knew how to do those jobs. I knew what those days required. Those days started at 6 a.m. and ended at 1 a.m. in the morning, right? So not everybody was able to commit to something like that. Me, I loved it. I loved being in the gym all day. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So you have to find the medium in which you communicate, and then you also have to find, actually what you're capable of doing. And I don't know what those things are, but you are, like I said, you already have to be doing that thing in order to add value to someone. So whether that's writing a book, whether that's, I don't know what other, and athletes also, they ask the questions too late of who they are. You need to ask who you are to other people, why you're in school, why you're around people who want to give you the time of day. Because when you're not active as an athlete anymore, it's really hard to get that because people have their own lives. People are doing their own things. So I hope people are asking, like, how do you see me? I hope they're asking that question to themselves. I hope they're asking that question to everybody around them. But, and somebody asked me this today. They were like, they were asking me, and she's a mom. She was like, what do I don't even know like what my thing is. Like I heard you say, she told me, I heard you say on your podcast, you know exactly who you are. Like, yeah, like I love human connection. So wherever that is, I can always have a job. Like whether that's in HR, whether that's a coach, wherever humans are and need to be connected with and need to be coached up or need to be, in a performance space, I can be there. I can exist there. Sports, it doesn't have to be sports. It just happens to be sports because my love for my brothers and the love for just, when I was an athlete, I understand what they go through. So that's why this is my discipline, but like, it could have been anything. But I was like, you're a mom. So you need to, what kind of world do you want your child to live in? That's where you need to go. You need to start from that lens. What is it, schools? What are the things you loathe about the world? And that's what you need to be trying to fix. So again, with athletes, it's like, what are the things that you hate? What are the things that you hate about the process? That's why you started this podcast. You were an athlete. You had to figure it out. So that's why you're passionate about this. That's why you're doing Thrive After Sports. That's why you're going to industry professionals and saying like, what is it? What was your process? I want to be able to share that with people. So it's almost like you've got to solve a problem. What is the problems that you don't like? I don't like the system. I don't like how athletes are spit out. I don't like how they can't, have a normal life. I hate how after sports, you have to sometimes go back home and you have to explain to people why you're not doing X. Why you're not a pro, why you're not this, why you're not that, because they're consumers of the sport. They don't understand what happened. They just know, man, he wasn't good enough, or she's washed, or he's washed. They don't understand that. They're just fans, which is why they're so critical of people in the NBA. They're so critical of people in pro sports for celebrities because they don't understand the fortitude, the resilience that it takes to get there, or to even get to the Division I level or the Division II level, to even make it that far. Like, and they don't even respect those other levels when those other levels should be respected too, because not only are they not on scholarship at those divisions, but they're also managing school and actually real majors versus like a D1 athlete who's not really, we're not really managing that many hard majors. Like, I took sports management, but that was so broad. Like I did tests on the road. I had study hall. Like I had, people handing me things. I had like the world constructed for me. And I wasn't even I feel like Robert Morris is not a blue blood school. So if we're doing that, imagine what it's like at Duke or at Kentucky or places like that or Arizona. And it's like, that's what you have to focus on. It's like, what are the things that your university did for you and who are those people? And you got to lean on them. You got to not be afraid to ask them for stuff. Like, you helped me through this time. I need you now. I helped y'all maintain your job by me listening to you as an athlete and you not having to worry about me. I helped you keep your job. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta reach back and you gotta let them know, like, I need your help now. Like, I don't care what it is. I'll work around the university. I want to be in, I want to help athletes with their classes or, all of that stuff. Is just like, you just got to have the will to want to pull from your network. And if you were an athlete and you put in all that work, they need to be able to help you. You need to hold their feet to the fire and say, I now need your support. I now need direction. Yeah.
Man,
I think
so
I went
good.
off on a tangent, but
Nah, hey, every tangent was definitely necessary. So let's just,
okay.
I mean, that was perfect because that actually leads me into, I did want to make sure we had time to talk about OTE because you
Yeah.
talk about helping, you just gave a master class on transitioning into life after sports, but in terms of transitioning into the pros and everything that comes with that, just tell everyone what OTE is and your involvement in that and what that looks like.
Yeah. So Overtime Elite is the name of our new league at Overtime. OTE for short, just like, NBA, NFL. Like, so we kept it a small acronym. But it is essentially a pro pathway, a 2-year program that does have a gap year. So if things don't work out the way you see it in those 2 years, you can come back for a third year. But essentially it's a pro pathway for young professional athletes, the one percenters of the world, whether that's in the actual basketball, the sport itself, or whether that's just in the influencer space, but you're good enough to play in this league. And it's for athletes who are really serious about their training and want to specialize as early as possible so that they get the exact pro training as if it was a major in school, to get those things on how to wake up at 7 a.m. with COVID now, COVID testing, right? Nutrition, financial literacy. And if you're in high school, there's a high school track. If you're a postgrad, there's a postgrad track. And now we're working on a college track. So you can get that training early instead of majoring in history and not being able to use your history degree because you're one and done. You're going straight into the pro life, but you have never had the opportunity to talk about your credit score. You never had the opportunity to talk about, okay, your check is $50,000. What are all these things where are they going? Where is all that money going? And, let's say you sign for a rookie minimum, but you only see half that money. Where is it going? When you travel to certain cities, like we travel to certain cities and, you're getting paid, but you're getting taxed in those cities because you're working, right? And so understanding how the league makes money, understanding how you make money from your name, image, and likeness that you're lending to us. And then also we provide a whole pot of money, $100,000 to go to college. And then we'll help you matriculate into school as well. And so let's say one of our athletes, just got drafted to the Puerto Rican team. And, we sent our athlete person over there to go meet them and make sure the teams are good. And so we follow you to your next place. So we're here to literally position you in the best place possible to become a pro, to get those 2 years under your belt with not that much pressure, not that much stress, although everything is pressure and stress in an elite environment, but it's not detrimental, right? It's not like, oh my God, you have to go right now. It's like, I'm 16 and at 17, I've grown this much because we have data science, we have nutritionists, we have dietitians, we have HPD, which is health and performance. We have specialized school, which is called OTE Academy, where we have the best teachers from science, math, government, history. And like we said, we outsource our financial literacy, but now we are not our financial literacy, our life skills. But now we're going to start doing that in-house because now we've seen what a year looks like since it's a startup. It's our first year, our first inaugural year. We now know what it looks like. So now we can build out our own thing and even do a more extensive work on what that athlete journey looks like and what you need in order to prepare you for the next level, whether that's the NBA, G League, overseas, or even to come and work back at OTE. So we're leaving the door open for our athletes and we're not pushing them out. We want you to be lifers. We want you to come in and say, you know what, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to, work in the athlete relations department as well. And so I know what you did for me, Shea, so I'm going to help do that too. And so that's what we're building here on top of the business. And we're allowing the athletes to help us with that. So it's been really
Man,
cool.
that's
And I helped,
major.
yeah, and I helped build and launch it. Like the foundation of it, just like from, like I said, the love of my brothers, being able to pour in that institutional knowledge of my other colleagues and to really shape and mold it for what I would want. Like I was telling you about that teacher, I put and built what I would want for my brothers, what I know they needed and what some of them missed, or what Malcolm missed when he was in that space and chasing that pro dream. So, and Malcolm played in the league 4 years, and now he's played in the overseas for the remainder of the year. So he started in 2011, and was it 2022? Was it 2021? I don't even know what the year it is. 2022 now. So it's like I basically literally did all that from my love, and it's great just to see it come to life, and yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool because now it's like an intentional thing that I've done on my resume that meant so much to me. So
Right.
yeah.
As if you didn't have enough impressive stuff on your resume already, huh? That's
And
what's
it's
up,
all
though.
through love, all through love. Love drove
There it
it.
is.
So yeah.
I love it. Yeah, and that's such an amazing initiative that you started over there, just to have that ecosystem and really just that support system and create those opportunities. I think that's something that I know you just started it, but like I think that'll go down in history as just a major game changer in the space for athletes, just to provide that resource and that outlet and those connections. It just, I mean, the value of that can't be overstated. So props to you
Man.
for making that happen.
Thanks. I'm happy that they let me be a part of it and let me be on the team. So it's really
Hey,
dope.
Shea, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up at the top of the hour. Do you have a hard stop, like right at the top of the hour?
No, I get nervous because no, I don't
Oh,
have
the
a hard stop.
lights.
Yeah, I'm like,
No, we're good. I really just have one more question. I wanted to ask you. It's one more question, but it's a two-part question. So your
okay,
podcast, Tipping the
yeah,
Scales, and that by the way, everybody, that'll be linked in the show notes. So just if you love what you heard from Shea today, which I know you did, make sure you tap in, click the link in the show notes to go check out Tipping the Scales. What had you actually start that podcast, and then what can people expect when they tune in?
okay. So tipping the scales, I started with my friend Tania. She also worked at the Sixers. She was the head of the entire HBSC, which is the Harris Sports Blitzer Entertainment, and that's the majority owners or partners of Sixers and Crystal Palace and all that. But she was head of HR, and so her son is Mikhail Bridges, and our relationship basically started as we're both Libras. We were both born on October 6th. That's how we met. And so we've been friends ever since I started at the Sixers, and then she left. I left shortly after her. We've been keeping up with each other, but yeah. So Mikhail got drafted to the Sixers. I was his person at the draft to kind of help him through the different, I guess, the gauntlet, we'll say, in the back of house when they get drafted. And so when he got traded to the Suns, that was a very defining moment in his career. And I was able to share that with T and kind of calm her down and relax her, because it was an emotional time, because they wanted him to come to the Sixers. So we bonded there. And so that's where our podcast, like we're like, we have something special here because of that bond and our friendship throughout the Sixers. So from a sports lens. So it's basically tipping the scales because we're Libras, but it also it's for giving people permission to live authentically themselves, and it's giving them information, because we're giving permission to ourselves to share our true selves, our stories, the things we go through as women, as Black women, as sisters and brothers and mothers, and all these. We're sharing those experiences with our audience and hoping that someone can resonate and give them permission to live authentically as themselves. So turn the permissions on in your life and just go for it. Be you. Like that's your authentic power, is to be yourself. And it's not easy. A lot of people don't do it. Some people wear masks. And so we just try to take all of those masks off and really just share who we are. And so we talk about sports, we talk about relationships, we talk about love, we talk about sex, we talk about everything. I talk about my job a lot. She talks about hers. And we've been professionals in these environments, and she sits in the C-suite, so she knows a lot about that. So she shares that. I've never been in the C-suite. And so I learned a lot from her too. And so, yeah, if you just need to, and we also love connecting offline. So through our Instagram, which is Tipping the Scales Podcast, you can DM us if you have questions in terms of the things we talk about on our pod, but just like life advice. We love to do that, her and I. So that's what it is. That's our intention on the world, is just to help people.
That's dope. Yeah, everybody go check that out. I recently listened to the episode with Nafis Ricks, who I did not realize was his fiance until I listened to it and had a
Yes, that's
conversation.
my
I'm gonna have him on the
fiance.
podcast. Yeah, he's gonna be on Thrive After Sports coming up soon. We're gonna make that
I
happen.
can't wait.
But yes, everybody go tap in with the show. And then Shay, if people want to tap in with you and follow your journey, how can they follow you personally aside from the
Yes.
podcast?
Well, thank you for that plug. So on Instagram, I'm Overtime Shea. On Twitter, I'm Overtime Shea. Like I said, my podcast for the show is Tipping the Scales Podcast. And I also have a page that is just starting up. It's called the Shea Dawson Experience. I just share quotes that I think can help people sow good seeds, and just teach people how to water those seeds. And so to grow a good tribe. And that's essentially how you find your success in the world, is through the people that you surround yourself with. So that is how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Shay, you've already been so generous with your time. You've already given us so much today. But before we close out, any last words? There's no specific, anything goes that you want to share with the athletes, the current, the former, the parents, the coaches, the people tuning in. Anything on your heart or your mind that you want to share?
Just that kindness is underrated, and kindness is never forgotten. How you make people feel, how you leave people, how they feel about you when they're about to see you or about to approach you, and how they debrief when they're not with you or when they're somewhere else, and how they speak about you and when you're not with them in other rooms is very important. So I think people should just be intentional about that. That is your brand. Focus on that, on how you show up in the world, and just be kind to people, and it will come back tenfold. You just never know. Like karma in the right way. It's like they say, like don't forget to pay those people back who've been good to you, right? We know how to pay people back who've been bad to us, but pay those people back who've been good to you. So leave your mark by just being kind, and you'll be surprised how good it is and how you can cash in on that later on. So that's been my secret sauce.
There it is. And that's the perfect way to close us out. That was awesome. Thank you, Shay. Everybody,
Yeah, thank you, Taj.
in. Yeah, I know everybody enjoyed this episode. Make sure you tap in with Shay. Check the show notes below. Follow her on social media. Shay, you are a prime example of what it looks like to thrive after sports. So thank you again for spending some time with us today. Appreciate you.
And thank you for sharing your platform, and you're doing an amazing job. And I'm so excited to see what you have next. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.